Go. Hello and welcome to episode number 18 of the vCD Roundtable. Topic of the day is going to be the vCF overview. So as we all know, service providers have to move step by step towards VMware Cloud Foundation as part of the changes in the VMware Cloud Provider program. But before we go into the details around vCF and everything else, let's start with a round of introduction. Toby is in the train and currently moving, so let's start with Toby.
Yeah, hello. My name is Tobias Boschek. I'm a partner at Comdivision and mainly focusing on the whole networking part, next to Matthias.
Yeah, Matthias, Eisner partner at Comdivision, focusing on cloud architecture. Sorry, but it was Eve saying Toby's moving and he stopped. Awesome. Sasha.
Yeah, Sascha Schwung, CIO and cloud architect at Comdivision, also working on cloud provider projects and what's next.
Good. Finally, myself, Yves Sandford, CEO and founder of the Comdivision Group, also part-time cloud architect whenever time allows, and also host of this podcast together with the others. So with that being said, let's directly dig into it and start with the main lines of vCF. If I were to actually want to start deploying vCF tomorrow, Toby, what's my first step? What do I need to do first from an overview perspective? So what are the components I need to have, and what is the high-level flow to get up and running?
The beautiful thing is if you start with vCF more or less from a greenfield perspective, you need more or less nothing upfront prepared. To be honest, yes, you need to prepare your networking. You need to bring in your hosts into your data center, but everything else is done automatically. There is something in vCF which is called the Cloud Builder, and the Cloud Builder would like to have the input. So, what is my management IP range? What is the range of my ESXi hosts, and so on and so on. So every necessary information needs to be bring up via Excel spreadsheet to your Cloud Builder, and then the Cloud Builder will start to ramp up your whole environment. So deploying your vCenter, deploying the vSAN configuration on your ESXi, deploying your NSX manager, form the cluster, prepare the host for NSX, and so on and so on. So we really can start from more or less zero and ramp up a whole vSphere, NSX, and vSAN environment in a couple of hours.
But being really honest, Toby, so I get the base story, but so I can click really fast and type really fast. I can bring up this infrastructure in a few hours as well. So that's not the really cool part. So is there anything else which might be more interesting around vCF?
No.
Matthias, it will change certificates automatically.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll buy it.
The big idea behind this is not really the ramping up, to be honest. So the big idea behind is that we can rely on an let's call it really default deployment, which is architectured by VMware of a couple of years project know-hows, by the architects of VMware, but also from their partners, so that we really can get a standardized vSphere NSX vSAN deployment, which makes it, at one hand, much easier for getting support in the future, and also that we know, okay, how an environment looks like, because all of them are more or less nearly the same, but already or still with a full flexibility of bringing in your own IP spaces, bringing in your own FQDNs, bringing in your own host configuration, whatever you would like to have to.
But that's
So at one point in time, already foreseeing somewhere this summer, we are going to do a challenge. We just actually set up a bunch of hosts Toby gets the chance to actually do this with vCF, and Matthias gets the chance to actually do this manually, including password changes, certificates, and everything else. And then we see who is faster.
And also this is the important part, because vCF is not only ramping up an environment. vCF is also there ramping up additional environments. So we're talking now about a management domain and talking about workload domain. So the management domain is more or less there just for my management environment. So my vCenter, NSX manager, area operation stuff, cloud director stuff, and so on and so on. So all of my traditional management components. And of the other side, I have my so-called workload domain, which is then really there for my workload where I can deploy or my provider VDCs from a cloud director perspective, and the cloud director can consume the workload domain as a resource domain for my virtual data centers.
Okay, and so that means this workload domains, and I have one vCenter in each workload domain. Is this right?
You can have one vCenter per workload domain, or you need to have at least one vCenter per workload domain, but you can have multiple clusters inside the workload domain. So you can still go, for example, with a shared approach, so that you say, hey, I would like to have multiple customers on more or less the same clusters, or I can go with a dedicated approach. And now, and that's really the interesting part here, from a dedicated perspective, I can now switch my behavior. I can really say, hey, I deploy a dedicated workload domain for a single customer. Or I say, hey, I go with a dedicated cluster inside an existing workload domain for a new customer. Or, as mentioned before, I go with a shared approach as well.
Okay, and when I go with a dedicated approach, so more or less a private cloud for the customers, that means I can manage this complete workload domain for the customer from the life cycle perspective. So I can do the updates. I can make sure that the certificates will be rotated every year or every half year, depending on what's necessary from the requirements. And I'm also can say, hey, I will rotate the complete passwords every three months, whatever. That I can do as a service provider, but have a dedicated environment for the customers. And that also means I can deploy this workload domain with a dedicated vCenter and a dedicated NSX manager.
You're referring to the latest and greatest approach of vCF version 5, where I can now decide for my workload domains if I would like to go with a fully isolated workload domain, which means dedicated vCenter, dedicated NSX manager, and at least a dedicated SSO, single sign-on domain, which is fully isolated from my management environment, fully isolated from my management SSO. Or also there, I can still say, hey, I would like to have my workload domain in not isolated. I would like to have it as a part of my management single sign-on, where I can then have just a single user and log in to all of my different vCenters. Or if I really have a customer requirement from a service provider perspective, where I say, hey, the customer would like also to relay on the CPOM, and would like have to access to his NSX manager, would like to have access to his vCenter, then I can still go with the isolated approach and prepare, or not really prepare, but I would say do still some additional services like certificate management, like password rotation for my customer.
So we spoke a lot about the basics of more or less vSphere and NSX now, but I think one of the other components, Toby, of utilizing vCF is also that I can use it to deploy the components of the ARIA suite and other things in my management domain and keep that updated as well.
Yes, there is also already some part of the ARIA operation stuff, or not really some part. There is the whole ARIA operations manager. There's the whole ARIA operations for log. There is still the Workspace ONE identity management, a single sign-on solution, is nowadays part of the vCF. And Matthias, keep your feet still. There is also the possibility to utilize vRealize automation or ARIA automation inside vCF, which is there for an automated deployment. But we are talking about the good. We are talking about the good solution. So we are talking about Cloud Director. And we are hoping that also the possibility of deploying Cloud Director directly out of the whole vCF stack will be there in the future.
Quickly to those joining us via the different live platforms, feel free to drop in any questions in the comments in the meantime so that we can answer them as we go along. So with the ARIA suite and all of these different components in it, I think one of the clear advantages, as you already pointed out several times, is not only the day zero operation, so that we can get the system up and running and the base platform up and running. It also allows us to do system management from a day two operation for updates and patches and stuff like that. My understanding is one of the huge advantages is that we now also with vCF that it will take care of the interoperability metrics. So that I, as the, let's say, user or service provider, do not have to spend at least minutes, if not hours, trying to figure out all the different components, if they are all allowed to work together, that this is actually being maintained by VMware.
Yes, absolutely. I'm not really a big fan to utilize the word of single patch management, but it is there in vCF. So I get the possibility to just download my new interoperability matrix, and with my patch management, I also then get the chance to update my SDDC manager, update my vCenters, update my ESXi hosts, update my NSX environment. Still in the normal way. So also there is no black magic in the background saying, hey, okay, I can do another update on NSX, or I can do some hidden patches on vSphere. No, it is still the lifecycle manager will utilize from a vSphere perspective. The NSX update procedure will be utilized from an NSX perspective. But as you mentioned, the big advantage is if there will be a new patch release or a new major release from vCF, we can be 100% sure all of the interoperability is tested and then the patch gets released.
Looking at similar solutions, when we talk about other vendors in the past, whenever they combine these things, one of the challenges which we always have seen is that there is a delay in how long it takes up until patches or things like that are being released. Do we have any experience so far on how fast VMware, at least for security patches, how fast they are going to make them available as part of the vCF plane then?
Security patches, especially when it comes to a high CVE rating, is absolutely the same like for vCenter, so same day. When it really comes to improvement patches or major releases, okay, there will be there at the moment. So we're still talking about what we have seen in the last couple of years. There is a delay. So for example, vCF, talking about vSphere 8, the vCF is capable of being utilized with vSphere 8 and NSX 4. I think at least 2 months from now in the past. So yes, there was a slightly delay of having vSphere 8 and having NSX 4 in vCF, but also there it needs to be verified, it needs to be tested. So then we can really say, hey, okay, now my vCF version 5 is there with the support of vSphere 8, with the support of NSX. Now I can really be 100% safe that all of the stuff is working.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, you want to have a stable platform from that perspective. You want to be sure that all of this is working together. But the question is always, the question was more because that was raised lately from some service providers. Is like, how fast will we finally get security patches if really there is an incident? I mean, as much as you can always blame every individual vendor, there are times where one vendor is better than the other. VMware just collected another beautiful one in ARIA automation. So if you haven't seen that one, there is a role issue, role management and security issue there at the moment going on. It's on the support homepage from VMware. So Again, everything has its times from that perspective. Good. Anything else, Matthias? You kept being silent and in the dark.
Yeah,
Don't you have light in Austria anymore?
Oh, I have light, but the switch is gone.
The switch is gone. Should I
That
send
was
you a
really
sleep-on
close.
train
Sorry.
for your travel?
Sorry. That is live, right? Yeah. So no, vCF. So what we already mentioned with all the security patches and stuff. So in the past, just being honest, that was one of my biggest concerns, because not being able to implement a security update with a really high CVE rating just immediately was one of my biggest issues, which was not possible in the past, but now it's possible, and that's really good news. So for me, vCF as a whole solution brings up a big advantage in terms of enabling CSPs to provide multi-tenancy and multi-tenant platforms in different ways. Because as a CSP, we might end up having customers being okay with, oh, I run on the shared platform, all good. So networks are separated, that's all cool. So, but there are other customers which might have the need to have their own dedicated infrastructure, their own platform for performance needs, SLA needs, whatever concerns they have. And with vCF, as a CSP, we now have the option to either provide it with vCD on top as a dedicated cloud, or just provide plain vSphere access with a dedicated vCenter, a dedicated workload domain, and have multi-tenancy on a different level and provide infrastructures. So there might be some customers not having the need to use vCD on top to manage their workloads. Furthermore,
who would not want to manage their workload with vCD?
People who are not aware of vCD. So we still need to spread the word and make a better job just to tell everyone vCD is the product.
Yeah, I guess we need to invite some other people to the show then from time to time, so that we get more viewers. So once we are talking about 500,000 viewers on our roundtables, that's actually where we can consider your task completed.
Okay. Challenge accepted. Yeah. But even with all of that and the centralized management, because if you have many customer platforms which are dedicated, the management of those platforms is challenging, because you need to keep track about the patch level, the build numbers, cluster consistency, which is a very important topic, because I don't know how many infrastructures all of us have seen a single cluster and inconsistent build numbers inside one cluster.
Yeah.
Oh, Sasha, yeah.
And also
story.
and also to add something on that quickly, not only inconsistent cluster configuration, also inconsistent hardware configuration. So which is also a big part of the whole vCF story, to have consistent hardware configuration as well. So sorry, now Sasha, back to you.
No problem. So another point is what we discussed with a few of the service providers, depending on the new license model and so on. That's core based on the physical servers, and that also mean we will not start again with all of the servers we have planned for this cluster. We maybe start with 4, 5, 6 servers, and then it's very easy with vCF to scale up the clusters if the need is there to add more hosts. And that I can also do over the SDDZ manager to say, hey, I need one more host. Maybe I have a pool of hosts still in the rack and ready for to add to one of my clusters. and that will be completely a new way that you as a service provider need to go, also because of the licenses. You becomes more flexible. I think that's an interesting point here, especially if you're working with DR sites.
That is interesting, but in that case, you just always need to keep in mind, if you want to use like a pool of physical hosts to expand existing infrastructures, you just need to make sure that you have a hardware consistent platform across multiple clusters. Or I'm not saying like the AWS approach, but that's what they basically do, right? They have a few standardized host systems, and then you can ramp up an infrastructure, workload domain, based on a type of hosts. And then you can expand your clusters with the same type of hosts. And that's, I think, the approach, Sasha, you have meant, because it makes perfect sense in that case. But but now we're on the far other end, like huge infrastructures and stuff. Maybe we would like to take 2 steps back. So Toby, another question. So what if I start brand new? I have a really small infrastructure, just 6 hosts, right? If I'm having only 6 hosts with vCF, I can't deploy 4 hosts for the management domain and another 4 hosts for the workload domain. So that's not possible. Why? Just because of math.
Yeah.
But is there a solution for that?
On one hand, why do you already know that you need 4 hosts for your management domain?
Oh! I read the documentation.
Oh, I'm surprised.
Unbelievable.
No, just kidding. Unbelievable. Just kidding. Yeah. Also for that, there is a solution. This is also something I mentioned already in another set of podcasts. There is no need that we start with a dedicated management domain. There is also an approach in vCF available with a collapsed management, which is the official name, to say, hey, I have my workload and my management running on top of the same cluster. But also, on the other hand, this is not being a pitfall for the future. So if I then come into the phase of scaling and say, hey, now I really have grown, my service provider business has really going well, I would like to now have the dedicated management domain. Yeah, just migrate your workload off from the management domain, and then you have your dedicated management domain. And still you can deploy your workload domains, whatever you would like to have, also from a starting perspective with a collapsed management and workload domain in the beginning.
But later on, so you just need to come up with a migration scenario if you need to split it.
You need to split it. So since we're using Cloud Director, yeah, just ramp up in a new PVDC and migrate your workload from one OVDC to another VDC.
Yes.
And that's it.
We have learned today, migration is not a bad word.
Elastic PVDC. I have heard something about it.
Elastic PVDC for migration? Okay. 5,000 things in my mind which can go wrong with that one. But one step back, I mean, so you can actually have your collapsed cluster and everything else. You mentioned before consistency from a hardware perspective. So how consistent or how identical does the hardware need to be so that I can add a host to a cluster? What's the typical scenarios?
I would say, at least from a typical scenario perspective, if we have vSAN as an storage layer.
He said if we have vSAN. We discussed. You were gone, Toby.
Okay, sorry. From a hardware perspective, I would say at least when we have vSAN in as an underlying storage, same disk group configuration. same amount of memory. CPU as always. I'm a big fan of having the same CPU, at least the same family. We know what's going on there from different set of cores and so on. So to be honest, I'm a big fan of having the same hardware configuration. If I'm not away, if it is not possible to get the same hardware again, vCF allows me also to ramp up a new cluster in a workload domain, or to be honest, in a full new. If I'm not utilizing vSAN as primary storage, with just 2 hosts. So if my hardware is really already so much outdated, yeah, just ramp up a new workload domain starting with 2 hosts and have fun, more or less.
Have fun, more or less, with 2 hosts. Okay. So, how would I then, just out of curiosity, how would I then upgrade a management domain later on?
From a hardware perspective,
Yes.
bring in the new hosts, then you know, okay, now I have a different mix of hardware. So add the host to your management domain. And then there is in vCF also a workflow available to decommission a host or to remove a host from a cluster. And then, so you ramp up your management domain partially to, for example, 8 hosts, migrate all of your workload, and then remove the old hosts, decommission the old hosts, and throw them out of the window.
And that's
Yeah,
possible.
that's ecologically, we are going to actually bring them to a proper recycle place. They will be dismantled, and all the source materials will actually be brought to where they need to go. We are not throwing them out of the window anymore.
Yeah, why not? We can throw them firstly out of the window and then bring it to the recycle station.
Yeah, but the microplastics.
Okay.
The emission of the microplastics.
Guy.
Okay.
Good. Matthias has a more serious question.
No. So we have a new question. What about vCF management domain based on OSA and migrate to ESA? That's a question in the chat.
I'm putting it on the screen even.
How did you do that?
Yes.
Magic.
Magically. To be honest, I don't have the answer right now. This is something we need to validate, because ESA has been introduced with the latest release, so with 5.1. Now we have also there the support for ESA. My personal opinion on that is, and still there is something which is still not allowed in vCF. You still can do your daily business in your vCenter. So if I have started with an OSA infrastructure and would like now to just do it in your vCenter as you would do it in a non-vCF environment, let's call it that way. But to be honest, this is just my personal opinion at the moment. We need to have a look, maybe answer this question in the next podcast if we have figured out already something. But still, as the most important part is, yes, there is the SDDC manager. Yes, there are workflows available in the SDDC manager. There is the API available in the SDDC manager. But if something is not available in the SDDC manager, but it is available in NSX, it is available in vCenter, still use it in the old-fashioned way. Let's call it the old-fashioned way.
But be careful if you have your vCF management domain running in a stretched environment. So ESA is not supported currently.
OSA is supported.
Yeah, ESA is not supported. Yeah. So the migration will not work.
The migration will not work, yeah.
But I think the hope is sooner or later, VMware by Broadcom will come up with a new workflow just enabling us to migrate a management domain from OSA to ESA. I think that would be the smoothest way.
Okay,
good.
So to answer the question, There is no info on that right now. We're just guessing and hoping.
Yeah, and we are going to take it and try to find an answer. Maybe not necessarily for the next session, because that's going to be NSX projects. But I mean, we can answer it in the Q&A section, but maybe then for the other sections. But again, for all of those who are actually listening live or actually seeing us or actually want to join one of the next sessions, you can throw questions at us, and sometimes you might get an answer, sometimes not. Good. Anything else which we think we should cover from a vCF perspective? At least from an overview perspective. I know that we already discussed that. We are going to, next episode is going to be NSX projects, but moving along in the long run, we wanted to then do a bit more deeper dives on individual pieces around vCF. Potentially, we are going to combine that with a live demo. So for those of you who are then actually listening to the podcast, it might be a bit boring to listen to a install, but you always have the links in the podcast, which also give you directly access to the videos, or you can join us for any of the live sessions. Once we announce them, you have the chance to join us there as well. That being said, I think that covers it. Sasha and I are already where our next podcast is going to be recorded, from our kickoff location in Fuerte. So that's going to be for next week, our location of choice. After we will have a wonderful boat trip where it's going to be stormy next week, so that's going to be interesting. So if some of us have lost color,
won't attend the podcast,
or he won't attend the ship tour, so whatever. Yeah, so we will, next week is going to be around NSX projects. We hope you enjoyed today's session. Before I speak my closing words, I'm going to hand over to Matthias for his closing words first.
Yeah, so
because Toby wasn't moving.
Yeah, no, so I'm looking forward into the whole vCF topic, and even though I'm looking forward to the first hands-on demos, because I think it's the new way and the future on how to manage the base infrastructure, because that's it. In the meanwhile, I think we consider having vSphere, software-defined networking with NSX, and software-defined storage with vSAN. We consider those three pieces being the base infrastructure of a data center. And that's the new way to manage kind of the data center operating system. I take the chance, Toby's moving, and pass over. Toby.
Yeah, also thanks for joining, and nothing to add from the words from Matthias. It will be the new way. We need to go the new way. I'm really happy to be part of it. So let's run vCF in the future. And hand over to Sasha.
Yes, thanks for joining. We'll see you next week, and yeah, we will provide you a lot of more information about vCF, going step by step through the different vCF design steps and the different options with vCF in the next weeks and months. Yves.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for joining in, whether you were live with us on the podcast or later on in the video. We hope you enjoy the show. You can always throw comments at the live streams and other things also later on, so that we can cover them in any of the sessions. Or you come into one of our live sessions and join us there. And with that being said, thank you for listening. Next week, we are going to record episode number 19, NSX Projects, and we'll cover that and do that live from the ComDivision Kickoff 2024 on Fuerteventura. And then we are also going to explain you what the next sessions are going to be. With that being said, thank you for listening in, and see you all again soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.